Hello everyone, this is Chris Christensen from the ThoughtSumo blog, bringing you a video tutorial on how to host your WordPress blog on Google Cloud. Now, one of the buzzwords these days is cloud or cloud computing, and if we head over to Wikipedia's website, and look at cloud computing, they define it as a kind of internet-based computing that provides shared processing resources and data to computers and other devices on demand. It is a model for enabling ubiquitous on-demand access to a shared pool of configurable computing resources. It sounds really complicated. The beauty of Google Cloud is it is not. Even if you have absolutely no experience whatsoever, you can pull this off, and you can pull it off fairly easily. I find that Google Cloud is easier to work with than Amazon's web services or Rackspace. It's pretty straightforward. The billing is really straightforward, and being able to stop billing is a lot easier, I find, than with Amazon. You can simply just delete a project and any billing that was going on in that project is gone. So whereas with Amazon, one problem that I ran into is that I had open things that were open in it that I didn't know were open, and I was being charged for, and that obviously was not a fun thing to get a bill for something I wasn't using. So let's get started. The only thing you need to get started is a Gmail account and a credit card. They're going to ask for billing information, and the beautiful thing about that is that you're going to get a 60-day free trial or $300 worth free trial of Google Cloud, and so you can spend the next 2 months messing around with this and really getting to know it and deciding whether it's something that you really want to use, and also figuring out how much it's going to bill you. Cloud computing is not as straightforward because you're billed by usage and hourly rates and so forth. I know that can get kind of scary, but it's also a great way to be able to start very small and then begin to scale up as you become more popular. And a lot of web hosting services like HostGator or GoDaddy, they can help you to a point, but they're not really that scalable. And so then you're going to, once you scale, you're going to have to move your operations, possibly onto the cloud. And why do that when you can start small and be able to do what you need to do? So if we head over to cloud.google.com, you will need to click on My Console, which is right here. You click on My Console and you come to a Getting Started page. And in the upper right hand corner, you have Sign Up for Free Trial. Now remember, I said you're going to need to have a credit card for this. You see on the side here, it gives you some information about billing, the free trial, and so forth. So I'm going to put my information in, and then once I'm done, we'll move on here. So now that we have put in our credit card information, it's creating our first project, which they adeptly name My First Project, and a welcome here. And you can tour the console. Please do this. It's a great way to get to know everything that's on the console. I'm not going to do it for this video. And they even have a tutorial where they will show you how to create a simple app with a front end and a back end database. It's just a great way to get to know it, and it's not it doesn't take a lot of time, and you can delete it right away and basically not really incur any charges for it. So we're going to click on Got It. First thing we're going to do is head over to the APIs, and we're going to enable the Compute Engine API, which allows us to use the Compute Engine basically giving us an instance that we can use. If you're not really familiar with instances or cloud computing, it's just a server. So we're going to enable the ability to use servers. This takes a minute or two, so it's a good chance to go warm up your coffee, and as soon as it enables, we'll be back. Alright, so the API has been enabled, and you'll notice here you have the little exclamation mark, and that's because it wants you to go to the credentials page. We click on Go to Credentials, and it asks which API we're using, and it already has Google Compute Engine in there. And it says, are you using Google App Engine or Google Compute Engine? We are, so we're going to click yes. And then we ask, what credentials do I need? And it says you don't need to create new credentials. We can use the application default credentials. Great. Now that that's done, we can click on Done. And our next step is to click on the hamburger menu up here. This has all the different areas for Google Cloud Platform. The one that we're most interested in at the moment is the Cloud Launcher. Once we click on Cloud Launcher, we can see there's tons of different things that we can start. And as you get more familiar with Google Cloud, you'll be spending possibly a lot of time launching different services. And so the one we're most interested in is WordPress. You'll see that there's 3 choices. Bitnami has a great service, and so you're welcome to use theirs. And especially if you need to do a multi-site, you'll want to do Bitnami's. There's one of that's not available for Google Click to Deploy. So we click on Google's Click to Deploy, and we can see here what version of WordPress it's going to launch. And then also down here, it's going to tell us what the projected monthly cost is. Completely ignore this. This is for what they recommend for the size of your instance, and we're going to get started with a much smaller instance. So if we go back up, we click on Launch on Cloud Engine. And if Compute Engine is not ready, as you'll notice with this, it's going to stall. Or it's going to say at the top, there was an error, please refresh the page. Don't worry about this. You can click on Dismiss, and while it's still initiating, because remember, we enabled the API for it, so it gets Compute Engine ready for you. In this case, Compute Engine wasn't ready for us. And so if we give it a minute, it's going to continue initializing, and then we'll come to the page where we can actually begin the configuration of the WordPress instance. And as I say that, it's coming up right now. Okay, so it's got the name at the top, the deployment name. My recommendation to you is to name this whatever you would want the name of the server to be, as if like you're naming a computer. So we're going to go ahead and name this WordPress 1. It has different zones. This is really important for where your audience is at. So obviously if you're in Asia or if you're in Europe, you're going to want to choose one of those zones because that's the data center where your server is going to be launched. If you're in the US, you have a choice between Central and East, and so we're going to leave it here in Central. Now remember, I told you that the projected cost was going to be different because we're going to change this here, the machine type. Now this has one virtual CPU and has 3.75 gigs of memory. We're going to jump all the way up to the F1 Micro, which has one virtual CPU and about 600 megabytes of memory. Sounds really small, but remember, this is a test site, and we can change this later on. And in a later video, I'll show you how to change this to a larger size WordPress instance. So we're going to put in what the administrator email is, and for this, I'm just going to put in my email address. And so we're going to go ahead and install phpMyAdmin. That allows us, phpMyAdmin is a graphical user interface for managing your databases. And it may not seem like a big deal right now, but down the road you may need to manage it, and especially if you want to back up your database really easily, phpMyAdmin can help you with that. So for the disk, we're going to jump to an SSD persistent disk, which costs a little bit more, but is much faster. And so we might as well take advantage of that high value then, because we're from a computing resources side, we don't have a whole lot of resources. So for disk size, 10 gigabytes should be fine. In the case of the site, I'm probably going to go with 50 gigabytes. That way, you know, if you have some images or videos that you throw on that you're going to actually self-host those videos, then obviously you'll need that bigger size. If you're just going to put YouTube videos onto your WordPress blog, those are being hosted elsewhere, so you really don't need that extra space. Down here in networking, we need to allow HTTP traffic and HTTPS traffic because that's web traffic, and we want people to be able to get to our site. So the next step is just to click on deploy. And this takes a minute as well. So if your coffee's empty or if you want to go jog around the block, this is a good time to do that. And it has the pop-up here for Welcome to Deployment Manager. And it lets you view and manage your Cloud Launcher deployments. Okay, so the deployment has finished, and we can click close here. You will notice lots of exclamation marks all over the place. You can ignore every one of them. If you want to, you can view the details, but they really don't matter at this point. But we have some information here that we need. So all of this information you're going to want to write down somewhere safe. And so in the case of the site address, the IP address for the site is here. You're going to want to be able to put that into the DNS manager for the URL that you've reserved, www.whatever.com. And so you have your instance name here, which you don't really need to worry about. Your WordPress administrator username is admin. Your WordPress admin password is here. You can change this in the WordPress interface, but that's a terrible idea because this is a great random password that hackers won't be able to pick off. Your MySQL password is here. Notice down here they recommend that you change that, and to do that, fairly easy, but really honestly I haven't changed mine, and I don't think you need to either. So we're going to go ahead and click on Visit WordPress Site. And you can see just a vanilla site. We go down here to the meta, click on Login, and enter admin and the password that they gave us. And we log in. And there you are. You have your WordPress site ready to go. Obviously there's some more details included here, and I'm going to cover one very important detail. And so if we go back to the deployment manager here, we need to change something, and it has to do with your IP address. So if we click on the hamburger menu again and we go down to networking, and then we go to external IP addresses, you'll notice that the type of IP address is an ephemeral, I don't even know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, IP address. And the problem with an ephemeral address that is if you reboot, there's a possibility you could lose that address. And that would obviously be a problem for your DNS. If you were to tell your DNS provider that 104.197.31.254 is your IP address, which should connect to www.whatever.com, if that changes, when people put in www.whatever.com, won't go to your WordPress site. So requires a simple change. Click on that arrow, click on static, just type in WordPress 1, which is the name of your instance, and reserve. The nice thing is that Google doesn't charge you for that static address. As long as you're using it, they don't charge you. Now, if you're not using it, let's say you delete your instance, don't have an instance going, they will then start charging you for that. That's why it's very important that if you're done with an instance, be done with the project. Go ahead and delete the project altogether. All right, so now that we have our IP address reserved, we're going to click on the hamburger menu again, and we're going to go ahead and go to our home page. And this is a very well put together page because it's telling us over here about billing and approximate charges so far this month. It has projects. It has the link to the compute engine where our instance is running. It has explore other services. And then it also has CPU usage, which is a great way to monitor whether you need to make that upgrade or not. So if we go over here and click on compute engine, it's going to open up our instance. You can create an instance in here if you wanted to. If you wanted to create just a vanilla LAMP server, which is Linux, Apache, MySQL, and PHP, you could do that. I find that the Cloud Launcher is a much easier way to do that because what's nice about the Cloud Launcher is all of the, especially with WordPress, all of the permissions for the different folders are already done for you. So you're just ready to go. However, if you wanted to explore your server, if you click on the three-dot menu here where it says SSH, you can open up an SSH terminal right here on the page, and it's going to open it right up in the web page. Some key things to remember if you're working inside the terminal. The only way to change things is to be a root user. So to be a root user, we type in sudo su and then dash, and now we're root. Now I will tell you, like I tell anybody else, that when you're at the root user, you can change anything, and you don't want to do that. You don't want to be able to. So quick warning, when you're the root user, you can delete anything. So you want to be very careful what you're doing when you're inside of that. However, you also don't need to feel like, oh my gosh, I can't touch this. You just be careful. So the first thing to do is to do a CD, which is a change directory, and go into the var www html folder. Then we use a command which is ls-la, and that gives us a list of all of the files and folders that are inside, along with their permissions, inside of the web server's main folder. And notice, if you've used FTP and you've uploaded things before, the WP, pretty much the contents of what you're used to seeing. Right now we're not going to make any changes inside of here. That's for a later video. So we'll go ahead and leave now. We'll click on leave page here. And that pretty much completes our video. So what you've learned in this video is you've learned how to get started with Google Cloud. You've learned how to use the Cloud Launcher to be able to launch a WordPress site. You've learned how to change an ephemeral address to a static address. And you've also learned how to access the console of your server. So you're ready to get started. I thank you very much for watching the video, and I'd ask that you hop over to our Facebook page, which is facebook.com/thoughtsumo, and like that page. And you can click on this picture here inside the video, and you'll go right to the Facebook page. Once you've liked our page on Facebook, head over to twitter.com/Christensen143 and make sure you follow me, and I'll definitely follow you back. I'd love to hear what you have to say, and I am an engager, so be prepared. I love to talk, and absolutely visit the blog. You'll notice here it's not up, but there, along with this video, are step-by-step instructions that you can print out if you want to, or follow along. So if the video goes too fast for you, you can do that as well. So, and thanks again.